Welcome back to episode 21 of Stories and Other Things Holy. My name's Joshua Minden, your host, and I'm glad you're here with us. On the first Sunday of Lent, in the Gospel of Luke, we're presented the story of Jesus' temptation in the desert. I couldn't help but make a connection between the idea of Jesus being tempted in the desert and the lesson that is revealed in Terry's story this week. Sometimes we face the temptation to over-identify with some element of our life, something we were taught, something that we attained, something we achieved, a message that we received early in life. And like Terry's mother this week, sometimes those things are no longer available to us, no longer accessible, or just no longer serving us. And it's in those moments that we're invited to remember who we are. I hope that you, like me, take some comfort from this week's story, some balm or salve on those aching parts of our heart and our life, that as we grapple with our poverties and our imperfections, that we can reground in our identity, being held in, sustained by the source of love. Stories and Other Things Holy.
Stories and Other Things Holy. Isn't it Yeats, the Irish poet Yeats, who has that line that, I don't know, I just reference it a couple times a day. It's a terrible beauty, huh? It's a terrible beauty. Well, which is it? Is it terrible or is it beautiful? It's a paradox. Paradox is so close to the soul of the spiritual imagination. You cannot do soul without doing paradox. Like taking two things that oh no, they won't fit together. And then lo and behold, God behold, we all behold, the things that somehow are not supposed to be together, they end up marrying each other. They end up embracing, they end up dancing. That's so close to the soul. And this story captures a little bit of the spirit of that paradox. So my mom, now she's 94. I've told us a couple stories about her. I call her one night and she sounds uncharacteristically shaky and also vulnerable. And she's like an optimist by nature. And so it was just odd. And I said, Mom, are you okay? And, she said, okay, but it was not at all convincing. I'm like, well, do you want me to come over? And she says, no, you don't need to do that. And underneath it was a subtext, like, if you want to, that'd be great. So it's, I don't know, 8:00 at night. I go over. She's in her little robe and she's having her grapefruit, which she had every night. God bless her. Grapefruit. And she has a black eye. And I immediately ascertained that she probably fell and she's shaken up. And yeah, so it explained a lot. I'm like, Mom, tell me about the black eye. She's like, no, I don't want to talk about it. That's also highly uncharacteristic. So finally, she says, come just say goodnight to me. So I let her get finished up, getting ready for bed. Then I join her in her bed, sit on the bed, and she has her reading and her little pillow. It's all beautiful, little green cup with water next to her bed. I'm like, Mom, tell me about your eye. And then she just whispers, I just can't do it anymore. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Said, this isn't a black eye. That's my makeup. And then she says, when I was 13 or 14, my mom came into my room. I was her only daughter. And she had a little bag. And in the bag was some makeup. And she taught me how to apply makeup. And then she said, Mary, I want you to put a little bit, she emphasized a little bit of makeup on every day. And while you do it, I want you to remind yourself that you're a woman and that you're beautiful and that you're precious. Do you understand me? I told my mom, "Yeah, Mom, I understand you." And then my mom said to me, and I've done it every day of my life until this morning. I know how odd it sounds, but somehow I believe the makeup, that I was precious, that I was a woman, and that I was beautiful. And I can't do it anymore. And then uncharacteristically, my mom wept. And then her mascara became even more intriguing, artistic, and messy. And I held her little frail, I don't know, at the time, 80-pound body. And we started a tradition that night, and the tradition was my brushing her hair. I got a wet washcloth and cleaned up the makeup. And then I said, "Mom, I really invite you to remember," like member, weave yourself back together as the beautiful, precious woman that you are. And then I started to brush her hair, and I reminded her, "Mom, you came from love, you are in love, and you are going to love. You came from love, you are in love, and you are going to love. So you should sleep really well tonight." Would that all the moments in our lives where we say, "I just can't do this anymore," lead us to a surrender and to an acknowledgement that even in our poverty and our limitations, we came from love, we're in love, and we're going to love. We should sleep really good tonight. Stories and other things holy.
Friends, I'm so thankful you joined us for this episode of Stories and Other Things Holy. In this week's email newsletter, we've also included a link to a survey where we'd like to hear from you about your interest in participating in a episode launch party. The idea is that maybe once a month, once a quarter, or if there's enough demand, maybe every week, anyone interested, we would get together on Zoom, watch the newest episode of the podcast, and have an opportunity to do breakout discussions or do some Q&A. We'd love to know if this is something you would be interested in. We'll include some possible times and maybe even some alternate dates if Sunday evening isn't the most desirable. But we would love to hear from you. If you don't already receive our email newsletter, now's a great time to sign up. Visit our website, storiesandotherthingsholy.com, for details. One of my deepest desires is that this podcast contribute to the healing, the renewal, the refreshment of the face of the earth and her people. And if that's something you value as well, I ask that you would take some time this week and think of some individuals in your sphere of influence, family, friends, co-workers, loved ones, who would benefit from this reflection, this story, or any of the work we're doing with this podcast. Encourage you to forward a link to the YouTube video or the email newsletter. Thank you again for your support, your participation. And as always, we'll see you again next week for more Stories and Other Things Holy.